When I was in middle school, I took the city bus to school because my parents couldn't drive me and no school buses routed to my neighborhood. I didn't live in a particularly good place, but I never felt unsafe. That morning I got on the bus to go to school. 6th grade at that time, so I was about 12. But let me tell you that I have always looked much younger than my actual age. It was decently crowded, so I go to my usual spot in the back. A few stops go by and then a man gets on and sits right next to me. It's been about 10 years now, but I still remember how he looked. Tall, thin, and Hispanic with long, straight black hair. There was maybe 1 or 2 seats open, so it wasn't weird that he was next to me at first. I just figured he sat in the first seat he saw open. Then he started to talk to me. I can't remember what he said at first, but being early in the morning and already peeved that I had to share my space with him, I just made vague, disinterested noises at him. Then he asked where I was going. That's when my spidey senses started to tingle because obviously it was early in the morning and I am a child, so I'm going to school. So I said, school, in a duh kind of way. I realize now he was probably looking for me to tell him which school. A few stops went by and the bus opened up some more seats, so I quickly went and found another empty seat. Not 5 minutes later, he follows and sits right next to me again, and still tries to get me to talk to him. He asked my name. I look to the front of the bus and see some 8th graders that I know from school and from riding this bus. My animal brain screams at me to find safety in the pack. I move up to the front of the bus and plant myself in the middle of them and basically press myself into them and give them help me eyes. The guy moves again and sits directly in front of me. He asks my name again, and one of the boys I'm sitting with, G, quickly calls me by a fake name and turns his body so he's kind of shielding me, and carries on a conversation with me until we get to our school. The group of 8th graders basically formed a circle around me and we huddled off the bus, and I turned to make sure the creep didn't follow us off the bus. Thankfully he didn't follow, but for the next few weeks I either caught the later or earlier bus in case he was on it again. And since the bus stop was right in front of my school, I was afraid he knew where I went and would show up. Luckily, I never saw him again. Thank God. I'm a 16-year-old guy and I wasn't expecting this to happen to me. So I just want to point out that this doesn't only happen to women. 2 days ago, I was coming back home from school. For background information, the bus the students go to goes to the center of town. I take that one and then I take another bus to get to my stop where I have to walk maybe 200 or 300 meters away from my house. I took the bus from the school towards the center, then waited at my stop. There were other kids from other schools that waited, and the creep. He wore his hat down and was glancing at me every now and then. I ignored him by putting my headphones on. This lasted for about 10 minutes until the bus finally came. I forgot about the guy but was still creeped out. I got on the bus and took an empty seat. I noticed the creep get on the bus too and was walking towards me. My red flags weren't out yet, but I still checked just in case. He took a seat behind me and then the bus started heading to the next stop. I heard something in the background of my music. I turned the volume down and I heard a voice come from behind me, from this same fucking guy. I pressed pause and heard him ask, "Hey, I think we live near each other. Can you just tell me which stop we're supposed to leave?" Of course, you'd think it's stupid of me to tell him the truth, but it'd be a bit of an asshole move to tell him bullshit if he lives near me. The bus approached near a stop that is at 5 or 6 stops from my place. I changed seats, imitating as if I needed to get off the bus. The creep moved too. Damn it, he's lying and following me. I then waited for one of the busier stops and God was with me because there was a crowd of teens probably planning to smoke and drink. As soon as the doors opened, I ran the fuck away from the bus and crossed the roads and entered a random shop. I kept my head down and looked out the window. As soon as the students were separating, I looked for the creep, and I could see him looking for me. I took off my hoodie and put it in my bag. I then went to the bathroom to make my hair wet. I fucked up my hair to make myself look a little different and then left the shop. I walked the long way towards the next stop, making turns at every possibility. After walking around a bit, I went to a small cafe and waited there for a bit. I sent a text to my dad if he can come get me. He asked me why and I told him the whole thing. He picked me up in a flash and then drove me home. I don't know who the hell that guy was and what the hell he planned out. I don't think he lives near me and I fucking hope not, but whatever the fuck it is, I hope we never meet again. A few years ago, I was on my way home. I usually take the bus even though I'm pretty uncomfortable with strangers being too close to me, but I have no driver's license and therefore not much of a choice. Anyway, I'm sitting there next to a window listening to music as a man sits down next to me. I don't think much of it, the bus is pretty full. I slide a little closer to the window so the man does not come too close to me. Out of the corner of my eye, I notice that he keeps looking at me, which makes me very uncomfortable, so I obviously look out the window and try to ignore him. I'm getting pretty nervous at this point. Luckily, we're close to my stop. As the bus drives up to said stop, I shuffle around a bit and get up halfway. As far as I'm concerned, this is a normal social cue for strangers on a bus that I want to get out at this stop and for them to let me get past their seat. Well, this guy doesn't see it that way. So I take out my earbuds and tell him politely that I need to get out at this stop and ask him to let me through. He just grins and says, "No." I do not want to push past him because then he has direct access to my body and now I'm really anxious. I think he sees it and takes up even more space so that I cannot get past him. I also notice that he looks really unkempt and is about double my age. Also, I'm a rather petite girl and do not come across as very threatening or anything. So I say again that I have to get out, this time very loud so that other passengers can hear me and help me in case of emergency. The man lets me pass but still doesn't give me much space. When I finally get out and walk in the direction of my apartment, I notice that he's behind me. I get scared. It's winter and even if it's not too late, it's very dark in the city and not much going on. I call a friend and ask if I can come to her so the man will not find out where I live. We're on the phone all the way until I'm with her. When I finally arrive, I turn around for the first time. The man is still there and grins at me. In the apartment, we keep looking out the window, but the man is gone. My friend walks me home later. I haven't seen this man since, but I'm still nervous about having to take the bus and I always try to be as close as possible to the driver. So first things first, a little background info for you guys. First, this happened to my little sister who is the best thing that ever happened to me. I love her more than anything on this planet. There's a 10-year difference between us, and during the time of these events, she was 10 and I was 20. I was also in college 2 hours away from home, which made the situation even more unnerving for me. Another important fact is that my mom runs an in-home daycare, and at this time, one of the kids my mom kept rode the bus home with my sister. For the sake of protecting the children, I'll refer to my sister as my sister, and the child my mom kept as Age. I promise all of these facts will come together. So one day after school, my sister is heading up to her bus to go home. She ended up walking on the wrong bus and noticed when she got up the stairs and realized it wasn't the same group of kids as our normal bus. She turns to get off the bus to head to the correct one when the bus driver stops her and tells her to get on. My sister explained that she was on the wrong bus, but the bus driver adamantly tells her that she wasn't and to get on the bus. So my sister, being young and afraid of getting in trouble, takes a seat and proceeds to internally freak out. Fast forward to 4:30 when the kids usually get off the bus at my parents'. H gets off the bus as normal. She informs my mom that my sister hadn't gotten on the bus that afternoon and my mom starts to panic. At this point, my sister has been on the wrong bus for about an hour and a half and according to her, he has still made no effort at communication with her. Now here is where the story really starts to get unsettling. After discovering her absence, my mother calls the school and informs them that my sister didn't get off the bus. After they confirm that my sister didn't accidentally go with the car riders group, they start radioing all the buses. Now, at some point before the radio call comes in, my sister becomes that last kid on the bus. The bus driver still hasn't acquired about her place of residence or even her name, but is still driving around. My sister overhears the radio calls asking if any of the buses have a student by the name of my sister's name. My sister speaks up at this point and tells the driver that that is her and that she is on the wrong bus. The bus driver didn't respond to her in any way and also didn't respond to the radio call. Just for clarification, we have no idea when my sister became the last kid, nor do we know where he was driving or where he was driving to. The only points in the timeline we know for sure is that she was on the bus at 3, H got off the bus 4:30 to 4:45, and that initial radio call probably went out about 10 minutes after H got off the bus. So the school contacts my mother and tells her that none of the bus drivers still on their routes have my sister on board, and that a good portion of the buses had already returned to the bus garage. While they tell my mom this, they radioed the buses yet again and the bus driver still doesn't respond. Around this time, my dad has come home from work. When the school calls them back and tell them they hadn't located her, both the school employees and my parents are flipping shit. My mom was even about to send my dad out to drive around looking for buses. The school sends people to search the classrooms and bathrooms in case she got left behind somehow, and they also send someone to the bus garage to search the buses in case she got on the wrong one and fell asleep or something. They also radio out to the few buses that are still running one more time. This time my sister's bus driver answers back that he has her on the bus. They tell him to head back to the garage where my mom will meet him and pick my sister up. To this day, I am very thankful they didn't give him our address to go to instead. It was about 6 when the bus got to the garage, so my sister is obviously pretty shaken up after spending roughly 3 hours with this pathetic excuse for a human. My mom didn't know the whole story yet, so she doesn't confront the driver. When they get home, my sister relays the story to my parents, who then realize that this could have turned out a lot worse. My mom calls me and tells me the story after this all took place. I will never forget that haunting silence after she finished telling me the series of events. To this day, I still feel that weight of dread in the pit of my stomach thinking of what that person could have done. Then I spoke with my sister over the phone, and the mist of anxiety still lingering around her words was enough to break my heart. I sobbed once we hung up. As her big sister, I just wanted to take her pain. The next day, my mom calls to complain about the driver and tells them the story of my sister's hellish bus ride. They inform her that he had just started working for them about a week before and they were going to look into it. To be honest, I don't remember if they gave her the driver's name or not. What I do know, however, is that the guy quit within a week after this. Apparently just stopped showing up with no notice. My sister had gotten an iPhone for her birthday that year, which my mom forbade my sister from taking to school. After this happened, my mom made her carry it in the bottom of her book bag every day in case something like that ever happened again. I am beyond thankful that my sister made it home safe that night, as I know that a lot of stories like this don't end with reunion. Though I am thankful, I am also livid that this man had the audacity to put my sister through that. I don't want to even imagine a life without my sister. But one thing that I do enjoy imagining from time to time is beating the shit out of that bus driver. During my freshman year in college, I had to commute for 30 to 45 minutes from home to the campus and vice versa. Before the start of the semester, my parents and I checked out dormitories near the campus, but it was fairly expensive and I wasn't really keen on sharing a room with 2 other people. My mother, who was an accountant, calculated the estimated monthly expenses I would have if I got a room versus staying at home and traveling. The latter showed a lesser value, so a decision was made. And honestly, I could stand a few hours traveling than socialize with my would-have-been roommates. But kidding aside, I didn't really mind this arrangement. Sure, I'd wake up at 5 in the morning so I could go to my 7:30 class without being late. I also used the travel time to cram notes and do assignments I didn't get to finish or even start. It took some practice to get my handwriting eligible with all the bumps and humps from car rides, but by the time I got the hang of it, my blockmates treated me like a boss. But that's beside the point. This incident happened around 6:30 in the evening. I couldn't remember the exact date, but I am certain that it happened on a Friday. The campus I attended had a civilian day during Fridays, while the rest of the weekdays we were required to wear our school uniforms. I was wearing a cute light pink top with little ruffles on the neck and paired it off with jeans and low-heeled shoes of a similar color. When I ride buses, I had a preferred seat. It's the seat right behind the driver. I was paranoid with morbid thoughts back then since I had witnessed a nasty car accident that had caused 22 casualties. I was thinking that if we ever get into an accident, the driver would instinctively steer the bus away, which would make me feel safer. So I stepped inside the bus and saw a handful of passengers sitting on their respective seats and minding their own business. I was relieved to see that my preferred seat was unoccupied, so I went there and settled myself, plugging my earphones on and gazing at the window. I barely noticed when a guy sat beside me. I just saw him on my peripheral vision. My phone vibrated. My mom was asking what I'd like for dinner. I quickly shot a reply and placed it back on my backpack, which was on my lap. The guy used his jacket as a blanket and covered his folded arms over his chest. I didn't think much of it since it was getting dark out and the poor guy must have been tired. But then I felt something brush against my right side, causing me to flinch. It was his knuckles. I tried to assure myself that it was just an accident. His eyes were closed after all. I shifted in my seat, trying to make some distance between us. I'm kind of lanky, so it wasn't a difficult feat. The bus had finally moved and the man handing out the ticket started to make his round. The man asked me where I was headed before giving me the corresponding ticket, and when he asked the guy beside me, he said the same city. I started to get the weird vibe right there, but I just chalked it up as coincidence. I was starting to get uncomfortable since I counted 4 times his knuckles brushed my arm. I was getting really agitated. The 4th time he brushed against me, his knuckles touched my breast. I was practically gritting my teeth at that point. I decided to hug my backpack so he wouldn't accidentally brush against my breast again. I thought that he'd stop by this, but no. He was forcing his closed fist on my side, and that was when I was certain of his intentions. No matter how much I blocked his hand with my bag, he would wedge his way stubbornly. The jerk. I may be an introvert, but once I get pissed, I am very vocal with my thoughts. I shifted my seat once again and saw that he was wide awake and a knowing smirk on his face. I fought off the urge to scratch that smug look. I took a deep breath and took off my headphones before loudly saying, "If you're trying that hard to touch a girl with a flat chest, then I feel sorry for you." All heads turned to our direction. The car timely stopped on a waiting shed, and while I was wondering why the fuck I had to blurt out those words, the jerk just took off running. He didn't even pay for fare, and we were nowhere near our destination. There was a stunned silence, but then the driver shook his head and started grunting, looking at the sliding door where the jerk had just gotten off. A fellow passenger, a sweet old lady, asked me if I'm okay, and I just nodded mutely. I may have chased away a maniac, but I had also managed to embarrass myself. Thankfully, there were only a few passengers inside. The driver told me to put my bag beside me and they won't charge me for occupying the seat. I was grateful for that gesture. The next 15 minutes had been uneventful, and when I jokingly told the story to my parents during dinner, it was then I had realized the full magnitude of the situation. I was sexually harassed. Some dude forced his way even when I tried to stop his advances. I had a fitful sleep that night, thinking of morbid thoughts. What if I didn't speak up and he got off on the same stop as me? What if he had an intention to do horrible things to me? What if I died that day? I was overreacting, I know, but it had been a few weeks since I fully recovered from that trauma. My father had to put up with me and drove me to and from school until I stopped being so paranoid. That was when I started a job. I prioritized having a car of my own. Now I don't use the buses anymore. This happened when I was in high school. Freshman or sophomore, so about 14 or 15 years old, but still looked much younger. I still rode the city bus to school because, again, no school buses routed to my neighborhood. My mom could have dropped me off at the time, but she started work at 8 and my school started at 9, so I was not interested in being at school at around 7:15. That morning I get on the bus as usual. It's not empty, but not full. I was a part of JROTC in high school, and that day was uniform day, so I was wearing my uniform. If you've ever seen female military uniforms, you know they're the least flattering thing in the world. I include this description in case there's any chuckle fucks out there who think that what you're wearing when you get creeped on makes a difference. So I'm sitting in my seat surrounded by my big ass backpack and guitar case for my music class. Suddenly this dude just materializes in front of me. I look up to see this guy, average height, sandy colored thin hair, and drug skinny with a tweaker face. So he could be anywhere from 20 to 40. He stands awkwardly in front of me and then thrusts his arm out and holds a folded piece of paper in front of me. He gestures for me to take it, and it's so early in the morning, and I'm so confused that I take it and he walks away. I open it and read it. It's a note that he wrote me that said something along the lines of, "Hey, my name is Creep and I've been watching you for a while now, but I'm gonna be switching buses soon, so here's my phone number. Call me." And had a number written down. I can barely process what I've just read and I can feel his eyes burning into me. I arrange my stuff in the empty seats around me like a barrier, and when my stop comes, I fly off the bus. I ran to the ROTC building where I would usually hang out before school. I burst into the building and basically tackled one of the ROTC instructors and clung to him, shaking like a leaf and crying, holding the note and talking incoherently. Now, our instructor was obviously retired military. He took the note from me, read it, and got the most steely-eyed look. He sat me down in a chair and walked me over to the school phone on the table. He calmly dialed the number and that dumb, creepy motherfucker answered. My instructor asked if his name was Creep. The guy said yes. Then he quickly told him that he was my father and asked, "Why in the fuck did you, a grown man, give my 14-year-old child your number?" The creep basically just went, while my instructor released a stream of very experienced ex-military based threats until he could hear the guy just about shit his pants. He finally told him to never contact me and hung up, and then gave me a huge smile and hug. I was smiling through my tears at that point, having listened to his tirade. I called my mom and told her what happened, and she came down to the school and we went and filed a police report. I told her I was never getting on a city bus again and I didn't care if I had to be at school 2 hours early. I wanted her to drop me off until I could drive. So that's what happened. That instructor was always my favorite teacher and I still go visit him even after graduating college. I imagine someday at my wedding he'll tell this story. It was truly crazy. I was taking the bus home from the store one night around 7 to 8 p.m. It's a route that I took on a regular basis, so usually I recognize some of the people on it. Anyway, this guy that I've never seen before gets on a few stops after me. He's probably in his mid to late 40s and wearing construction attire. He keeps looking back at me as if he recognizes me or something, so I just kind of fake smile at him in hopes that he'd stop. Instead, he takes it as an invitation to start a conversation. He starts asking me all these invasive questions to which I give the most generic non-answers, hoping that maybe he'll notice that he's making me uncomfortable and leave me alone. Instead, he asks me out for drinks. I say, no thank you, I'm a minor. To which he replies something along the lines of, "That's okay, I don't mind." And then, "Maybe I can join you at home." I think he went on to explain that we could watch a movie and that he'd make me the best drink I'd ever tasted, but I interrupted him and told him that I was uncomfortable and didn't want to talk to him anymore. I put in my earbuds and watched him out of the corner of my eye for the rest of the ride. Every time someone pulled the cord or the bus stop, he looked back to see if I was getting off. When it finally came to my stop, I was feeling pretty uncomfortable but pulled the cord anyway. As soon as I started gathering my stuff, he started shifting like he was getting off too. When I stood up, so did he. I waited until he was off the bus before sitting back down in my seat. As the bus drove away, I saw that he was still standing at the stop waiting for me. I decided to ride the bus all the way back around for another 2 hours to eliminate the possibility that he was still waiting and then rushed home. I suppose he could have just been a harmless stranger who just happened to be getting off at that stop, but it seems unlikely to me honestly. I find it extra shady that I'd never seen him before and I'd never seen him again, even on the same bus at the same time. In retrospect, I probably should have at least reported it to the police just in case, but I was just blown away by the whole situation and didn't even think of it. Funnily enough, just months later at the intersection near my bus stop, I had an encounter with a different stranger who turned out to be wanted for assault. And a few months after that, yet another guy told me he'd buy me anything I wanted as long as it was under $7,000 at the crosswalk at the same damn intersection. The weird thing is that before these encounters, nothing like that had ever happened to me before, and nothing like that has happened since. It was just a weird few months, I guess. This happened about a year ago, which would make me 22 at the time. While not a real looker, I do have a baby face and creeps or wannabe pedos come up to me on the regular. I look barely legal with makeup on and as a young teen on the regular. I'm about 5'3" and tend to wear somewhat baggy clothes, which adds to my childish looks, I guess. Around 9 p.m. I got on the bus I usually take and somehow managed to take a seat. At the next stop, I glanced around to see who got on the bus, trying to see if there were any elderly people or just generally someone that seemed like they needed to take a seat more than me. That's when I noticed this plain-looking man. He was casually but decently dressed and somewhere between lean and slim. He had a short buzz cut, probably to hide the fact that he was starting to go bald, I imagine. But what I remember most vividly were his eyes. He was staring right at me. I started to feel uneasy, as most people divert their eyes after a time in situations like these. Now, I know I tend to be a bit paranoid, so I try rationalizing right after I looked away and through the window. It could have just been that he was tired after a long day's work and wasn't looking at me but kind of through me without even realizing it. It's happened to me before. But there was something off about his look. It didn't seem blank, tired, or aloof. It was intense. I slowly looked back at him again, only to find him staring at me again with that same focus. I tried acting as if I was just looking around and then went back to looking to the window. I could see his reflection in the glass, so I kept an eye out for him. I didn't feel afraid, just uneasy, since there were a lot of people on the bus as well as quite a few stops until mine, and I was still convincing myself I was just being paranoid. The next stop came, and then the next, and then the next. He didn't get off. The only thing that had changed was there were significantly fewer people on the bus, and he took the seat 2 rows in front of mine. However, instead of facing forward as a normal person would, he was turned to the side, which gave him a good view of me and the doors. I thought about getting off a stop early and just walking home, but quickly discarded the idea since that could just provide him with more opportunity to corner me somewhere if he needed to try to follow me. So on to my next plan. I tried to act like I was oblivious to his intense staring. I'm not sure how convincing I was, since most of the time when I try to fake something I just get the perfect blank poker face. He didn't seem to change his behavior though, so I tried telling myself that at least I didn't get off the vibe that he was scaring me now. I was close to my stop and had decided to wait and then exit at the last possible moment. When the bus stopped and opened the doors, I looked out and then looked back again. I could see his body tense for a second. A few people started getting in and I saw him relax again. After the last person got on, I hurried up and out, a smile on my face. I thought I had fooled him. Unfortunately, he jumped up almost at the same time as me and managed to get off as well. Damn. Not only did I manage to lose him, but now he definitely knew I was trying to get away from him. I had no doubt he was following me now. I wasn't sure what to do. My house was just 300 meters away, but I didn't exactly want him to know where I live. Apart from that, as cliche as it sounds, I do live on a small, somewhat secluded street that isn't well lit, and not many people can be seen on it at night. It doesn't even have sidewalks, so that should give you the idea about the traffic on it. My last hope was the crossroads I needed to go over. Let me paint you a picture of it, since that is what saved me. So I got off the bus, walked down a bit, and crossed the street to my left. From there I had to wait for the green light and cross the street again, then I just go uphill for about 150 meters, and then on the first street to the left. 100 more meters and I was home. The thing was, when the light turns red for the cars on my left, it's still green for the cars coming from the right. After about, 15 seconds it turns red for them too. And then 5 to 10 more seconds the light turns green so that people on foot can pass. I couldn't be sure since it's not a small city or neighborhood I live on, but I hope he wasn't from around and that he wouldn't know about the traffic lights. So I tried playing it cool, pretending not to notice that he was constantly about 2 meters behind me like a freaking not so subtle shadow. As luck would have it, there wasn't too much traffic coming from my right, but there was some. I waited for the next car to come up, not too close and not too far, just enough for me to run across the street but to prevent him from following me directly behind. I remember hoping he wasn't from around here again before I started running. I guess he wasn't expecting that. I quickly glanced behind me and saw him starting to cross but then backing up since there was still traffic coming from the right. This is when my luck doubled. A bus was heading my way to the stop that's right beneath the corner of my street. I'm pretty short, so I maneuvered my way through the crowd of people that just formed, hoping he'd lose track of me since most of those people were taller than me. I managed to get to my street but figured he wasn't far behind. I didn't want to run up straight to my house since he could easily spot me. I decided to crouch between two parked cars right at the corner. I figured it was a good hiding spot. The street was dimly lit and I could peek through the car window, but he couldn't easily see me. After a few seconds, there he was, right at the fucking corner. I could see that he was breathing somewhat heavily and he just stood there. He peered into my street as if straining to see if I was somewhere in the distance. Even though it was dark, I was so scared he could somehow see me. Then he looked up ahead of him with the same expression. I didn't dare move, and after what seemed like an eternity, he decided to go up instead of on my street, but I still didn't move. I kept thinking what a stupid decision he'd made. There was no way I could have gone up fast enough for him to see me if I had went there. I was afraid he'd realize that and come back. After a while, I honestly don't know how long, it could have just been seconds. I figured it would be stupid for me to wait for him to come back, so I just rushed home. I made sure everything was locked after I got in and was never so glad to see my dad home. In hindsight, I could have just called my dad and asked him to pick me up at the bus stop. I have no idea why that thought never crossed my mind. It would have been the smarter thing to do, but regardless, I'm just glad I'm okay and he never caught up to me.